I was having a conversation with somebody and they told me, hey, there's a couple of things you can do if you want more views and you want more traction. I had to explain to them that that is not what I am going for. I'd rather a couple of dozen people who I actually know and could make use of this information watch the channel versus growing subscribers. And then I told them if I really wanted subscribers, I could just use bots. And that got me thinking, I haven't done a video about bots exclusively. So here we go. We are going to talk about digital farming. That is sim farms, content farms, laptop farms, and then bot/click farms. Actually, I think click farms and bot farms are going to be two different things. We'll talk about that in a second. But what do I mean by a bot? What I'm talking about when I say a bot, I'm talking about automated software that performs online tasks and routine functions that make it look like there is an active person behind that online account or online persona. Pretty much what is happening every single day on everything that you're looking at all over the internet, because as we've discussed in previous videos, the majority of content on the internet is generated by bots. Now that we all know we're living in the age of the majority of the internet being bots, you might ask yourself, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? Well, I don't know exactly how we got here, but I can tell you one of the things that significantly contributed to it, of which I have firsthand experience. Back in the day, you had a bunch of kids who really liked music, and you had these record labels who wanted the kids to pay more money than they could afford for the music. So what did kids do? They became resourceful, of course. I am not admitting in any way that I was part of this group, but I'm just saying this sort of happened and I may have firsthand experience in it. Not only did these record labels want kids to pay more money than they could afford for this music, they wanted to shove the artists of their choosing down the throats of the kids. They were saying, you need to listen to these, look how popular they are. And then these companies, and not just record labels, also media companies like MTV, started introducing these online contests. Online contests where they expected the band with major label backing and major sponsors and corporate ownership to win. But then kids started doing something very interesting. They started finding ways to make their favorite bands win. At first, you'd have these LAN parties, as you all remember in the early 2000s. You may or may not remember depending on how old or how nerdy you were. You'd get together, bring all of your computers together, and you would all click away, vote, 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 vote. American Idol was one of the early examples of online voting. And as we all know, there's a whole other story for another day where those contests are alleged to be predetermined. Kids started saying, we need to find a way to battle this record company. We don't want these bands shoved down our throats. We want our local heroes to have the spotlight, and we can fight back because we are ingenious and we can develop these techniques that can take over the contests. One of the contests, which I have firsthand experience with, was the Ernie Ball Battle of the Bands. Back in the day, my band wanted to play Warped Tour, and one year we thought we were doing pretty well. And then we were looking at these bands who had nobody showing up at their shows, who really had no following whatsoever that you could really discern from actually showing up at the shows, but they were winning and they were getting these thousands and tens of thousands of votes. So I started doing some research. And then what I ended up finding was there was a massive bot campaign. You may be asking, what exactly kind of research were you doing? We can talk about that in person, not on YouTube. So anyway, I was doing this research academically, and I found, oh my goodness, they are manipulating these contests. Not only were the bands manipulating it, it appeared to me that they were manipulating it with at least the tacit acknowledgement of the record labels or the corporate backers. And this was also evident when you started looking at the fact that the most downloaded songs on Kazaa and LimeWire and Napster at the time were not matching the Billboard charts. There is some argument to be said that the reason they weren't matching is because the Billboard chart reflected purchases, not actually downloads. But then there's a whole other thing, you get into payola or whatever. So let's skip that and let's acknowledge that likely this inverse relationship between the bands at the top of the corporate charts and those at the top of the Kazaa, LimeWire, Morpheus charts showed that there had to be some sort of manipulation going on in the background, because one of the coolest things at the time was that Napster, Kazaa, Morpheus, LimeWire, and all of these other peer-to-peer music downloading services, well, not that they were specifically for that, but they really were a reflection of what was going on in the bedrooms of the people that were listening to this. They were sitting in their room, downloading this, in their dorm room, in their basement, wherever it was, because bots had yet not taken over. So in response to this, of course, the music industry says this will not stand, and they up their tactics. They get more advertising. They try to shut bands out. But kids get even more and more resilient. They said, we are going to bring our people to the top of the charts, and they start engaging in different campaigns, such as adding mouse recorders. Instead of just getting together at these LAN parties that I described, humans clicking on it with the dial-up modem or the DSL at the time or whatever, they started using mouse recorder software like the one that you see here. From mouse recorder software, it evolved to scripts. They're writing scripts that could actually send correct user agent strings. They're finding out how to vary IP addresses because at the time, there wasn't really VPN checking services or VPNs in general at the commercial or consumer level. So these were very tech savvy kids. Don't ask what I was doing sitting at that computer. But all I'm saying is this is what was going on. After a while, they started winning. The contests were won by local bands, by the heroes of these kids. And we did end up getting on a Warped Tour. The work of these kids did not go unnoticed by the record labels. Rather than just admitting defeat, the record labels realized, wait, we can use this. Marketing companies realized we can use this. And then you started seeing these things apply to movies, to products, of course, still to music, to sports, to anything. And today, it is applied in geopolitics, in finance, in sports, in anything having to do with public sentiment. Bots are rampant. You see example after example. But what back in the day was a bunch of kids connecting physical desktops to a DSL line turned into a bunch of scripts running on a bunch of headless servers now has become completely different. Of course, you introduce smartphones, and that's another layer that people have to overcome in order to engage in bot behavior. That was cost prohibitive at first. At first, this is what bot farms looked like in the days of smartphones. Now they've developed new techniques that allow you to go here. You don't need the full phone. You just need a couple of pieces of the hardware. You can emulate everything from the telemetry on the phone to the ambient radio frequencies, all of this kind of stuff to the degree that will satisfy the very low threshold, which a lot of these platforms have for bots. That's something to understand as the question pops into your head, which is, wait, why don't they stop the bots? If you've talked about telemetry and you've talked about sensing ambient radio frequencies to make sure somebody is real, why aren't platforms doing this? I don't know. You can ask the platforms themselves and the people who pay for it. So now we are in this place where you don't need the LAN party, you don't need the scripts, you don't need the phone, and now you don't even need the human. You can AI most of these things now. You don't have to create the content. Before you'd create a bunch of content, you'd have the automated posts come in. Now with AI, this is what it looks like. Yeah, it's just one computer. You don't even physically need the computer. You can do all of this stuff in the cloud. The danger there is that what was traditionally a resource intensive and very niche thing is now in the hands of everybody. Now you know where the evolution of bots goes. You have to understand that bots are enabled by digital farming, and there's different kinds of digital farms. The first one we're going to talk about is a SIM farm. A SIM farm, pictured here, is when somebody gets a bunch of SIM cards, whether physical SIMs or eSIMs, and allows people to rent them or use them as a proxy service or to use them to make it look like they're making a call from somewhere. You can send SMSs, you can make scam calls, you could use the IP address to make it seem like you are actually there. This is how a lot of these higher level bots are being enabled. You need the infrastructure in order for that bot to make that comment saying, I got my tickets to whatever event, do you? And start creating that FOMO for an event that maybe doesn't have any traction whatsoever. They need that infrastructure. And the SIM farms are the first part of the ad infrastructure. A second type of digital farm is a content farm. A content farm is when you have a bunch of people sitting in a house or a warehouse or a studio somewhere, and all they are doing is making random piece of content after random piece of content. Maybe it's someone getting hit with a pie in the face. Maybe it's someone making spaghetti. Maybe it is paint swirling, mixing with oil, water and oil, just whatever garbage they can just start cranking out. They'll pick a niche and they will just make 1,000 videos about a weird topic in that niche. Even if it's not original, even if it's regurgitated, even if it's just copy and pasted content, they're just cranking it out because the bots need some sorts of content to post. So you see, we're going down that little tier here. They need the infrastructure to get out to the internet. They need to know what they're actually going to put on the internet. And then you also have what we call a laptop farm or a server farm, whatever it is, because they're going to need some sort of computer to run all of this stuff on. They're going to need some sort of computation power. You can rent this, you can get it overseas, but now you can actually in-house a lot of it on your own bare metal. Here are the pictures. So let's go again. SIM farm lets you go out to the internet using a real IP address, so that way you're not getting blocked by using a VPN. A content farm helps you generate a giant library of garbage that your bots are going to post. The laptop or server farm is what allows you to have the physical infrastructure, and then you have the actual bots. The thing that I'm talking about now is the actual AI agent, or the agent. At the time they weren't AI, but now modern bots are all AI based, that is going to know, when do I post that content? What should my exit node be? Should I be using a SIM that is in New York? Should I be using a SIM that is in Jakarta somewhere, depending on what your bot campaign is trying to achieve? And the scary thing now is, you used to have to create a lot of that content I talked about in a content farm. It used to have to be made by real people. Now you can AI the whole thing. If you want somebody making spaghetti without showing their face, look at these videos. It's cake to do this stuff now. And bots have a couple of goals. One of the main goals that bots have is just a simple click farm. You need clicks, you need fake followers. That's how you buy these things. It's an easy day, no problem at all. But there are other more nefarious goals that these things have. Let's start off with scams. Let's say you live in Wisconsin, but you're getting a call from a Wisconsin area code, a number that doesn't come up as scam likely on your little phone app. And then you pick up the phone and it's someone's voice. It sounds like a real voice. Maybe they're even speaking with a Wisconsin accent. They know what to say. They know who you are because they've already gotten all of your information from a data aggregator. And now you're paying that medical bill that you totally think you actually forgot to pay, when in fact it is just a scammer. So bots are used for scamming a lot. These bot farms are rampant. There's even some that are being used for pig butchering, which are a hybrid run by humans and by actual just automated AI bots. There's a great DW report about the pig butchering factories in Myanmar, which I am linking here. They lure people from English-speaking countries into Thailand, and in the middle of the night, they take their passports and unknowingly they think they're just going on a ride, but they're crossing the border over to Myanmar, and now they are stuck in these Myanmar scam factories. Then you have what I call first world uses of these bots, which is scalping and hoarding. Scalping meaning Ticketmaster. If you want to get tickets to a show, you basically have to use bots these days because it's just bots fighting bots. That's all it is. And I've said it, the internet is really just bots arguing with bots, pretending to be humans, pretending not to be bots. Inventory hoarding is when you buy every possible item that you can out of a limited release batch. That would be, I buy all the sneakers, I buy all the Pokemon cards, I buy all the what's really popular nowadays? Pogs. Yes, Pogs are very popular nowadays. Or you buy the limited edition yo-yo and you're hoarding all these Pokemon cards. So scalping and hoarding are something that we've seen a lot of use recently for these automated bots. Then you have click fraud and ad fraud, which is part of the experiments that I ran. As you remember in one of my other videos here, I talked about how I ran I may or may not have run my own bots against my own advertisement and saw that the provider of the ad was still charging me for ad traffic, even if it was my own bots just clicking on it. So what do people want is they would want to get an unsuspecting client, you know, a little local haberdashery. I don't really know what a haberdashery is, but a local haberdashery hires a shady digital marketing company. That shady digital marketing company then enlists one of these shady bot farms. The bot farm then clicks a bunch of times on the ad of that local haberdashery. That local haberdashery in turn sees, wow, I'm getting a lot of traction, a lot of clicks. Thanks so much, digital marketing company. Digital marketing company collects the money, and there you go. Now there really was nobody looking at the ads for that haberdashery, and they're wondering why conversions don't add up to impressions, or vice versa. And lastly, one of the most significant issues we are seeing with these bots are disinformation, amplification, and creation. Pretty much, you have not just in the news at the geopolitical arena, I'm talking fake reviews, PR narrative control, stock manipulation. Think about what you would be able to achieve if you could convince investors that everyone was souring on a product, or nobody was going to attend an event, or if a business was getting bombarded with good or bad reviews. This is one of the biggest problems I see with bots is you don't know what to trust. You can easily solve this. Here's a free idea. Review sites, you're only allowed to accept reviews when the telemetry, the RF, and the GPS matches up to show that the person is actually there or has been there within a reasonable amount of time. Easy day, there you go. Real reviews by real humans, but they won't do that. Why? I don't know. Ask yourself that question. So you might be asking, how do people set these up? Does everyone need a factory in Myanmar full of unwitting individuals? No. Well, first, You have a gray market for bots. You have companies like these which allow you to rent these bots or rent the infrastructure for specific purposes, such as inventory hoarding and scalping. But you could use them for a whole lot more. You can also go DIY, right? DIY right here. There's a bunch of GitHub stuff for making your own bots and kind of managing your campaigns. But then there are also commercial offerings like these guys. These guys, look at this. They literally have, this is their marketing material, not mine. They have the exact diagram that I discussed saying, yeah, we do all this for you, no problem. So it's up to you guys kind of to realize that the bot thing is really rampant, that you shouldn't be leaning into the bots, and that you should maybe change your business model to take into account bots and maybe find another way to get conversion. Stop paying all these shady digital marketing companies to give you impressions that really don't matter. Now that you've seen how easy it is to create a bot farm and how rampant they are, maybe you should start asking yourself, should I keep believing all of the reviews and metrics and everything I see on the internet? Or should I just maybe, I don't know, do a better job of connecting with my customers, with my family, with my friends, with my professional circle by doing something outside of the completely digital space? Maybe start calling some people, maybe shoot an email, send a random message, send pictures to each other instead of posting them. And that way, maybe we can survive just a little bit longer as a human race.